Okay, so we are ready for our final version of the header, and that is the desktop layout. So let's make a plan of action here. We have the mockup. We need to figure out how many grid rows and grid columns we need. So grid rows is pretty easy. It looks like there's just one single row there. So grid columns, it looks like maybe this is like a 3-column layout with the columns overlapping. But in order to achieve this, we need to actually have more than 3 columns. And sometimes it helps to think about how many grid lines do you need rather than how many columns do you need. And we need a grid line anytime, anywhere where there's something like beginning or ending. So if I can just kind of highlight over this PDF, we're going to need a grid line, obviously, here at the beginning. We need a grid line here for the logo to start. We need a grid line here for the slogan to end, so that's 3. We need a grid line here for our logo to end, and we need a grid line here at the other end. So that's 5. And depending on how literally you want to interpret this mock-up, we could say, okay, well, there's 1, 2, then the slogan ends there, and the hero image begins there, and the logo ends there, and then the hero ends there. But we're just kind of assume that let's just kind of assume that the intention is for the slogan to come like halfway, and then the hero image is going to do the same. So both the hero image and the slogan are going to overlap halfway into the logo. So in that case, we just need the 1, 2, 3, 4 for the end of the logo, and 5. So that's 5 grid lines, which means that we have 4 columns. So we have 1 row and 4 columns. Now, how big should each column be? We could just kind of guess at it, but let's try to figure it out. So I have this opened up in Illustrator, and the image didn't load, but we know the image is right there. We can get a sense of approximately how big our columns should be if we can just draw some boxes here on this this mock-up. I'm going to measure like the size of I'm not very proficient with Illustrator, by the way, so maybe there's an easy way to measure this, but I'm just going to draw a rectangle here and see that is about 18 inches. My units are set to inches right now. 18 inches. Okay, and then I'm going to measure the logo, and that is a little over 4 inches. So we know that that logo is taking up 4 out of 18 units. And I've already divided that here, but 4, so 4 out of 18, that means that the logo is taking up 22% of the space. So we know that we need a grid line at the beginning, middle, and end of the logo. So the logo is going to be split up exactly in half over 2 columns. And so each of those columns needs to be half of this. So 11%, or if we're using FR units, we can make each of those columns 11. And then the other 2 columns on either side of that will be whatever the remainder is, split in half. So if we make this column 11 and this column 11, that's 22, and there's what, 78, 100 minus 22, 78. So each of the other two columns will be 39. So we can use those as our numbers. We can use FR units and make our columns all proportional. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm in the desktop media query here, and I'm going to select the header. Ooh, wrong brackets. There we go. Header, grid, template, columns. So we said 39 FR, 11 FR, 11 FR, and 39 FR. So that totals 100, and each one of those should be the correct proportion. You can use any numbers for the FR. We've been usually using like 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR, or maybe 1 FR, 2 FR, so the one column would be twice as big as the one. So, you know, 1 FR, 2 FR is the same thing as 10 FR, 20 FR. Or 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR would be the same as 50 FR, 50 FR, 50 FR. The numbers don't really matter as much as the proportion, the ratio between the numbers. So this could also be 3.9, 1.1, 1.1, 3.9, right? The actual numbers themselves are only important because of the relationship between them. So just to like make the math easy for ourselves, I just made it the total of 100. So you can think of it kind of like percentages, but it's not exactly. Okay, so there's our columns, and then our row. We only need the one row. So oops, not grid row. We need grid template row. Rows. Come on. Auto. So just that one row, and it will just be as big as we need it to be to fit the content. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so first thing is obviously our elements are in the wrong order. So we want our slogan actually to be first. And so if you remember back from the previous video when we talked about order, the default for everything is 0. And we want the slogan to be first. So these two are in the logo and the hero image are in the right order in relationship to each other. So really we just need to move the slogan to the front. So we can do that by giving a value less than 0. So we'll select the slogan and give it an order of -1. Oops, -1. -1. There we go. All right. Hey, look at that. All right, so they're in the right order. Let's get them overlapping. So as we learned before, we kind of need to be like very explicit when we want stuff to overlap. So let's tell the browser that we want the slogan to start in grid column 1, and you could do 1, 3 or 1 span 2, whichever makes more sense to you. But basically, we want it to start at the beginning of the first column and take up 2 columns. So that should work. And we also let's not specify the grid row yet, just to see what happens, because I think we will need to specify that, but I just want to show you like what would happen if we don't. Okay, so slogan, logo is going to take up it's going to start at grid line 2, and it is also going to span 2, and then the hero image will start at grid line 3, and it will span 2 as well. Alright, let's see what happens. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, it's good. So this is what I was talking about before, where grid kind of assumes that we don't want things to overlap. And so even though we have said, hey, we just want one row here, it will be like, you probably don't want these to overlap, right? So it just kind of automatically creates new rows. So you can see they're in the right columns, but they're each in their own individual row. So we do have to explicitly say grid row 1, grid row 1, grid row 1 on all of these to really drive home the point that yes, we do in fact want these things to overlap. And there we go. We got them overlapping. Alright, so let's see what else we need to do. We have the opacity back on the hero image, so let's do that. That's easy enough. Opacity 0.5. Okay, cool. And what else? The slogan, let's work on the slogan. The slogan does not take up the full height. So let's make it, well, let's refer to our grid guide. We can kind of get a sense of how this works. The default is that grid items are going to stretch to fill the entire height of their row. Scroll down to the alignment stuff. Okay. Align items. Okay. So align grid items along the block axis. So in this case, that's the vertical axis. So the default is stretch. They fill the whole height of the cell. We want them to just be centered instead. So it will look like this rather than this. So we want to apply align items center on the grid. And I could just apply that to the slogan, but I mean, it actually, everything looks like it's centered vertically, because we need to, whoops, that's the wrong one. We want to center the logo as well, and might as well center the hero image. So instead of applying to each item individually, we'll just apply it to the whole grid. So that is align item center. Alright, cool. So you can see now that yellow background color is only taking up the height of the content in the padding. Cool. Alright, so I'm not so sure about the size of the logo. Let's see if we're close. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Oh, it's way zoomed out, that's why. Okay. Let's put it to 75. Yeah, it's going to be, I was going to try to make the browser the same size as this mock-up. It might be hard to do. So, because if we get it too small, it switches to tablet. So let's just use our judgment here. I think this logo needs to be bigger. So let's adjust our columns. Let's try 14 instead of 11, which means this total now is 28, which means we have 32 left over. No, 72 left over. Which means each one is going to be 36. Okay, I like that better. Cool, okay. So we need to deal with the slogan text. On the mock-up, it is, interestingly, it's all, each sentence, I guess, each word is on its own line. It's all like right aligned, but not aligned all the way to the right. So that's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky to think about how you might do that. Let's get them all on their own line. You could do that by putting a BR after each one, but that's definitely not the best solution. For one, because BR has a certain semantic meaning, which doesn't really apply here, but also because we don't want the BRs for the other layouts. So we want a solution that we can apply only to the desktop layout using CSS. And we're actually part of the way there. We put the span around this one earlier because of the hyphen. Let's go ahead and put spans around each one of these. Span, span, span. Okay, so we have 3 spans, and span is, if you haven't used span that much before, it's just, it's like the equivalent of a div, but for like inline level like text. So instead of just like a non-semantic container, like block level container, span is a non-semantic container for bits of text. So basically, we just need some element around each of these so that we can target it with CSS. So we're going to select all of these spans inside this paragraph. Slogan span. And we're going to give them display block. So we're taking what would normally be inline text and giving it display block, which of course means that it's going to each take up its own line. Voila, okay. And the text is centered right now, so let's change that to align, text align, not on the span though, on the slogan. Text align right. Okay, and so now we just need to push it over, which we can just do with padding on the right side of it. It looks like we probably want to add some additional padding on the top and bottom too. So let's do that. Padding, let's say, what is the current padding? What is the current padding? So if you're trying to use your dev tools and you can't, like, I need to get it to desktop layout so I can see what the padding is on there, but I don't have enough room here, so we can actually just pop this out to a different window. Separate window. Boop. Okay. So now you can have this be full screen and still see your dev tools. So I'm going to inspect the slogan and check out the padding is currently 30 pixels. So let's bump that up to 40 pixels on the top. Something on the right, we're not sure yet. 40 pixels on the bottom, and doesn't really matter. 0 on the left. Alright, so what should our right padding be? We want to move it over enough that it's not overlapping with the logo. Let's just try a pixel value. Let's try 50 pixels on the right. Come on. Refresh. Huh. What have I done wrong here? Padding. This is just not enough padding, I guess. 100 pixels. Yeah, still not enough. Because the size of this is going to change, I'm thinking what we might want to do is, instead of pixels, let's use a percentage value. I'm not sure. Let's try 30. Okay, yeah, that's decent. It's like the mock-up. Yeah, that looks fairly accurate, I'd say. I think we lose the border, so that might happen on the tablet version, actually. No, tablet still has a border, so on the desktop we will say border 0. There we go. Okay, so cool. So since we use a percentage value for that padding right, then it will adjust accordingly depending on the width. Okay, anything else? Let's give this image a little padding. Maybe not on the top though, because that pushed everything down. So let's do 0 on top and then 40 pixels everywhere else. Okay, we do want a little bit on the top. Or we could also put a margin bottom on the nav. That is looking pretty good. I don't know if you can hear that through the microphone, but my baby is like running around upstairs, evidently dragging something on the floor, so it sounds really crazy. You know, I think maybe we want to add a little bit more space there. I mean, you can use your own judgment there. You know, we could keep tweaking this forever to try to get it exactly how we want it, but there it is. That's the full finished site. Now, there are some things we still need to adjust here, like, you know, we want to lose probably the margin, that we put a lot of margin top and bottom on this logo for the mobile layout. We want to lose that. For the other layouts, we forgot to do that. The tablet or the desktop layout has some space here between the images, so we could add that with just a little margin bottom on those images. Lots of little tweaks that we would now, as a last step, go through and really start making sure that everything looks good at every width, really paying attention to things like text size and making any like minor breakpoints that we might need to introduce to really make this nice and polished. Like, you know, we would want to fix the text size of the slogan for the mobile layout, and just stuff like that. One last thing I do want to try to do, and that is this guy right here. That's the one thing that's like really bugging me. So I'm gonna save that for one last video, and I'll see you then.